Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. We are here today to talk about Sword and Fairy 7. This is known as Sword and Fairy Together Forever here in the West, and the reason for that is quite simple. It is only the second Sword and Fairy, I believe, that has had an English release, with the previous one being Sword and Fairy 6. So we haven't had any of the ones before that. It is the 7th game, however, and it has been doing excellent numbers in China, its homeland, for many, many years now. It has been around since 1995, I believe, where The Legend of Sword and Fairy was released, and it has gone from strength to strength since. There has been television shows and stage plays, and I believe there's even been manga and books as well. This has become a multimedia property that has become as important to the Chinese and their video game industry as the likes of Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest have for the Japanese games industry. That's the kind of reputation it has, and I am so thrilled to be able to play it because this is an excellent game. Sword and Fairy 7 is amazing. I have a review up on digitallydownloaded.net, which you can check out. But the long and short of it is this has been an intense year for RPG releases, and even within that, with the exception of the localization, which we will talk about in a little bit, with that exception, this game is right up there with the likes of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Elden Ring as one of my favorites for the year. The reason for that is quite simple. This feels different. Because it has the Chinese cultural background and because it is so steadfastly Chinese in the way that it is delivered, it feels fundamentally different to the way that the Japanese RPGs work or Western RPGs work. This has a different mindset and it has been approached in a different way from a different cultural background, and you feel all of that while you play. So it actually feels quite fresh. I'm a little bit concerned that people will miss it because it has come at the tail end of a very long year of RPGs, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 did just release. But I hope people give it a go because it is exceptional. It is just the most beautiful piece of art. It is, in many ways, has been a reminder for why I like to play video games and why I love the RPG genre. This has been a real refresher for me. And on that basis, I really am hoping that a lot of people check it out. It may be your first Sword and Fairy, it probably will be, but it is worth your time and energy, and it is worth taking a punt with because the chances are that you are going to like this. So Sword and Fairy 7 has two elements to it that really help it to stand out. One is the combat system. Sword and Fairy 7 has this action combat system that is very heavily reminiscent of wuxia films, and I really hope I pronounced that correctly. I really, really do. I apologize if I have not. But just about all of us have seen wuxia at some point or another. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is probably the most famous example of it. It was a globally mega hit of a film, but there have been a lot of other ones, and it has been something that the Chinese film industry has really mastered over the years and has exported successfully globally as well. There are a lot of other film industries that use elements of it because it is really nice when it's done well, but the Chinese continue to be the kind of masters of it, and they're justifiably proud of this kind of cultural contribution to global cinema. Sword and Fairy 7 has that in spades. It's very distinctly a Chinese game because it looks like a Chinese action film. A lot of RPGs, a lot of video games in general, try to make their combat as hard-hitting as possible. They try and give it a visceral quality where you can actually feel the impact of strikes when they land. But wuxia has a different feel to it because it is this dance-like, almost balletic, elegant, flowing style. It's more about the kind of the movement, the quality of movement across the screen that really gives this its distinctive look and feel. And while this game doesn't do it perfectly all the time, perhaps because of budget or perhaps because of the ambition, there are moments where it breaks the momentum of the movement, which is, it pulls you out of the fantasy a little bit. When it's on song, and for the most part it is on song, this game has the most beautifully elegant movement of battle, and it feels nice in the controller. It feels different. I don't think I've ever played a game that has a combat system that feels quite this graceful, but it feels nice. It is something I would like to see developed. I'd like to see other developers try and learn how they've worked with movement in this game, because I want to see more of this. This is really exciting stuff for me. And again, it gives this game an immediately distinctive and original quality that helps it stand out from the many other RPGs that have been released this year. The other quality this game has is its storytelling. This is a very distinctly Chinese game, and in the same way that a Japanese game will often have a Shinto philosophy built into it, whether it's deliberately there or not. It's just the creators, being Japanese, have naturally put their culture into their work, and it kind of comes through as the player. The Sword and Fairy 7 has that same quality, only this time Chinese. I would not be the right person to talk about Chinese spirituality or, their philosophy, because that is definitely not my speciality, and I wouldn't want to do it injustice by trying here. But what I will say is I feel it. I feel that there is stuff in this game that I don't understand because I don't understand the philosophy and the theology well enough, but I want to. I fundamentally want to understand Chinese philosophy better so I can better understand what this game is doing. It features a story that plays between heaven, hell, and earth and the conflicts between them in a very different way to Christian religion. I mean, when you think of heaven, hell, and earth as a Westerner, you tend to think of the Christian version of that, which Sword and Fairy 7 is not. These are very different demons, angels, and humans, spiritual humans, but it features that kind of tension and and your characters are going on a quest to kind of resolve that. And it is a very earth-shattering quest. Like, the stakes are huge. It is appropriately dramatic in the way that it escalates the tensions and the drama. It does all the things that you would expect from an RPG, just from a different perspective of heaven, hell, and earth and the relationship between them. And again, I don't entirely understand all of this stuff, but I'm very much fascinated. The thing that it reminds me of perhaps most is a film that I watched, a film adaptation of Journey to the West, or at least the story of Monkey from Journey to the West. And I would be lying if I said I even remember the name of the film. It's been quite a while ago since I saw it, but just the way that it presents its spiritual elements, I feel that through Sword and Fairy 7. So again, I'm sure there will be people out there that do better analyses of the narrative of this game than I ever could, and I would certainly hope that people go out and try and learn about this, because it's obviously important to the game. There is a lot of thinking that goes into the narrative and the script, and it deserves analysis. It's just not something that I can do. What I can say is I love it for what it is. It is making me think as I play, and as I said before, it is making me want to learn more, which is always a good sign for me. If a game about a topic that I'm not familiar with leaves me walking away and wanting to learn more about it, then I know that game has had a suitable impact on me, and this game has certainly done that. The only thing that lets that down a little bit is the localization. And it is unfortunate this game doesn't have a great localization. It's not terrible. I played Sword and Fairy 6 and it had a much worse localization than this. I've played a lot of Chinese games over the last couple of years, and a common thread among them is that the localization needs work. I believe that is simply because it is relatively recently that we've been getting Chinese games localized into English, and when you remember back to the Wild West days, the Japanese games did not get particularly good translations either. Now that we're telling much more expansive stories, it's a little bit perhaps more obvious in something like Sword and Fairy 7. I mean, All Your Base Belong to Us is a kind of funny anecdote from a Japanese old game that was translated poorly, or You Spoony Bard from an earlier Final Fantasy, but that's a short line. In this one, we're talking about a lot of text and a lot of storytelling, and Chinese localization is probably in that same place. It's got a while to go before we'll get the same kind of quality localizations that we get from Japanese games. But that being said, you can follow it. So I have played games from China where the localization is far worse than this, and it's just, you're going to have to go in expecting to need to reread some sentences a couple of times to fully understand what they're getting at. As long as you've got the patience for that, then you'll get through this plot just fine. And yeah, I hope that that doesn't let people down. I am a little bit disappointed, I must admit, because East Asia Soft, the publisher of this game, did an absolutely spectacular job of taking Zhuan Yuan Sword 7, which was a Taiwanese RPG, and releasing that. They actually fixed up the localization for the Western release, or for their own release, their physical release, and it was a really well done game. This one doesn't have the same level of quality control over the script. I would suspect because it is a much bigger script, more expansive. It is, once again, it's quite readable. I just would have liked for it to have been a bit better. But we'll get there. We will get there with Chinese games. For now, the fact that they're getting localized and the fact that they're so fundamentally different, they kind of add an extra dimension to the RPG genre as a whole, which I really like. If we can get to the point where we're getting a fairly even balance of Western RPGs, Japanese RPGs, Chinese RPGs, then the overall genre is the better for it. So do check this out. Please do read my review, and I really can't enthuse enough about this game. I'm sure I'm going to be talking about it more in the future. I'm sure it's going to be a Game of the Year contender for me as well, because, like I said, this is one of those ones that just stick in my memory. The other thing I do want to quickly finish by saying, Sword and Fairy 6 is one of those games as well. I had issues with it. The localization wasn't great. It was a much more technically inferior product to Sword and Fairy 7, but I still remember that game very fondly many years later. So I think that this game is going to be one that really sticks with me for a long time to come. Okay, do let me know your own thoughts in the comments if you're playing Sword and Fairy 7, if you're able to pull yourself away from Xenoblade Chronicles 3 just long enough to give this game a go. Please do let me know. Please do give it a go and talk to me about it, because it is going to be a niche thing, so I hope I can get every fan of Sword and Fairy 7 onto my channel as possible. If you enjoy my videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. That way you will get to see them all as I upload them. And if you want to support what we do here on digitallydownloaded.net, that being the videos, the podcasts, the articles that we write on the website, you can support us all for all of that by backing us on Patreon. You can do that for just $1 a month or more if you're feeling generous, but $1 a month buys you in as such. And on top of supporting all our work, Patreon backers do get a 56-page magazine every month, which goes in depth with all kinds of Japanese games and culture stuff. So if you're into your Japanese film, music, literature, anime, manga, and of course video games, then we cover all of that in the magazine. So hopefully it's interesting to you. It seems to be interesting to everybody that does subscribe, and yeah, it's the cheapest subscription you'll get for $1 a month anyway. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you at the next video.